News report.
Today we bring you an exclusive, the first interview in English. Olga Deutsch is the vice president of NGO Monitor, and last week they put out an explosive report.
Essentially, like this guy said, the Jewish people have voted for these things. They've lured Benjamin Netanyahu into talking offensively.
Connecting all the human rights organizations working in the Gaza Strip with the terrorist group Hamas.
And this is I think a few weeks before Israel even went in to Gaza. And you wrote essentially a prediction?
Well, I knew it took me a little while to realize that Sinwar was actually innovating. And
really incredible what you guys revealed last week. So I want you to take us back.
Which is not a well-accepted political maneuver. So
when did this research start? What is the research about? And what does it tell us?
Well, it is incredible, and it's not, right? We just had this conversation while entering the studio. There's nothing that most of us did not know.
You just said things about Netanyahu that English-speaking people can barely stomach.
I know.
You're accusing him of being some kind of foreign agent, or at least selling out.
Hamas completely controlled everything that was going on in Gaza.
And part of the problem with innovation in the Middle East is that it's not necessarily something wholly new, but there are moments. We used to have the golden age of airline hijacking in the 70s, and that gave way to the age of suicide bombing with the Marine barracks in Lebanon.
It contains some pretty damning information about the Israeli Secret Service, the most Here's ABC's John Mark.
The sensational claim of the book involves this bloody Marine barracks bombing,
which was really a technique that was imported from the Tamil Tigers separatist movement in Sri Lanka. There's no history of suicide bombing, I think, in the Middle East before that.
The book says Israeli agents kept vital information from U.S. Marines that might have saved the lives of 241 Americans killed here.
Oh, this guy speaks such an amazing English, you know, and he's standing in front of the Congress and everybody loves him.
Israeli government sources deny this account, but according to the book, an Israeli informant saw a Mercedes truck being fitted with secret panels for explosives. Israeli troops were told to be on the lookout for the truck, but the book says the Israelis intentionally gave the Americans only a vague warning, not mentioning the kind or size of the vehicle. The book says Israeli intelligence was willing to let the terrorists succeed to protect their sources and out of contempt for U.S. intelligence.
They bombed American embassies. They killed 241 Marines in Beirut. They killed and injured thousands of Americans with their IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center.
I think has been a wake-up call from hell. It is telling us you have the power now to act, summon the will, because the terrorists have the will to destroy America, to destroy freedom, to destroy all of America's allies and all the democracies, Israel being simply on the front line. There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever.
Netanyahu said, quote, "We're benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq." Netanyahu then reportedly said these events, quote, "swung American public opinion in our favor."
They burn the American flag. They chant endlessly, "Death to America." Our enemy is your enemy. And by doing what we're doing, we're dealing with something that will threaten all of us sooner or later. Our victory will be your victory.
Right. He's not good for Israel. That's the truth. I'm looking at the proof, the facts. You can't make this thing up.
It was sort of a Stasi little country there. What is explosive and what is incredible is that now we have hardcore evidence.
But it was a hope. Now, had there been a possibility for Jews to leave Eastern Europe, to go to Palestine, the estimate is that at least a third of this 4.5 million would immediately have taken the opportunity to come. It would have been extremely difficult. There were only 500,000 Jews in Palestine at the moment. But it would have come not all at once. You know, all that was stopped by the Holocaust. There was nothing left after. Out of 3.3 million Jews, 3 million Jews were killed.
חברים, סיימתם? תמשיכו. אם אתם חושבים שככה נפתור את הבעיה, תמשיכו. אני הייתי אצלכם במעל. אתם רוצים להמשיך לצעוק, תצעקו. קחו 5 דקות, תצעקו.
The Holocaust almost prevented the rise of the State of Israel.
Outline of a large circular nave of the original church. Like Temple Church, headquarters of the Knights Templar in England, it was built in the style of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, a reminder of the order's purpose.
Things like focusing on extremism, Senator, have created a climate inside our ranks that feel political when it hasn't ever been political.
More Holocaust, less Israel. That's the equation.
But he has evoked the Crusades in the past. His 2020 book, American Crusade, Our Fight to Stay Free, includes a chapter entitled Make the Crusade Great Again. Joy Western civilization, freedom, equal justice under the law, thank a crusader.
In October 7 alone, something like 6,500, which is the biggest amount of rockets ever was launched against a state in the history of humankind.
Before October 7th, when the United States attacked them, I think there was a huge opportunity.
It is a total war doctrine. So that is another point. So this guy that was running against him thought that maybe, if he's a genuine guy, thought that maybe he could offer an alternative to save his people from a total war.
Completely controlled everything that was going on in Gaza. What is explosive and what is incredible is that now we have hardcore evidence
about the war.
Regularly, the Sukis start a big war. One war produces 3 generations of controllable humans.
Exactly how and to what extent this was happening.
Control how?
Control them with a loser's mindset. A loser's mindset has the mindset to be isolated, untrusting, dishonorable, non-cooperating.
$15 million was transferred in cash from Qatar through Israelis to Hamas.
The worst part is that the international organizations didn't just fall victims to this Stasi-like regime.
Under attack by commie Nazis.
They have been divided and conquered. They have adopted the Friedman strategy. All this strategy, honor to the inside, dishonor to the outside.
I think the most common misconception about Zionism is that the movement was primarily about rescuing Jews from persecution, rescuing Jews from poverty and destitution, and bringing them to Israel.
A two-faced game theory.
And what I realized is that I was trying to figure out, why would Sinwar do this crazy thing? Doesn't he know what's about to happen? And then I realized, oh, no, he knows exactly what is about to happen.
I mean, that's sensible. But it's all good. You know why? Because in time of war, you need extraordinary measures. During World War II, there were lights out. People would knock on your door.
Bringing them to Palestine before 48.
However, just want to make the point. The notion hit me all of a sudden. I saw 10 or 15 people marching. It was like peace, love, white, middle-class kids who probably believe in the notion that don't go to war, don't take out these people, let's have a conversation. They were saying, make love, not war.
The reality is much the opposite. It was precisely those Jews, those needy Jews, those Jews who were impoverished and destitute, who faced pogroms in Eastern Europe. It was those Jews who were the first ones rejected by the Zionist movement. Because the Zionist movement, they didn't want needy, impoverished dependents. They didn't want families with lots of needy kids who couldn't work, who had to bear all these burdens of taking care of the elderly and their diseased kids, or their sick children, or their family members who needed extra help. The Zionist movement didn't want those people.
And he is figuring out how to force Israel's hand in something that is not widely known in the US at least, called hybrid warfare.
The notion hit me all of a sudden, what would happen if somebody just dropped some anthrax in the middle and they sort of caught it? What would happen to the point of view? The question being that
Why do you think the number came down from 1,400 to 1,129?
Because it was inaccurate.
No.
Why?
According to Israeli official, because so many bodies were so burned and so stuck together, they could not distinguish the fighters from the Israeli hostages, right? So that much fire that burns the body that much, do you think people with machine guns on motorcycles have that kind of fire? No, that was the firepower of tanks and Apache, and according to Israeli witnesses, Israel was a lot, according to a Hannibal directive, if people would like to actually look that up, Israel actually killed many of those hostages on the way out.
I have a feeling they're going to want to kill anything very soon after that. Right. So do it the Israeli way, folks.
That's not how you're going to build a Jewish state in a land of 90% non-Jews.
And the concept of hybrid warfare is that kinetic war, which is what we traditionally think of as the majority component of war, is not necessarily the major component. And the major component, in fact, was video.
No, to build a state, a Jewish state, in a land of overwhelmingly non-Jews requires force.
To Arabs, they were behind the fence, and their fingers were holding onto the fence like this, and they said to me, "Don't do this. You don't understand who's going to take over it."
Many times, the whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier.
They were complicit.
And he was desperate for video. And what was the video that he was desperate for? The video he was desperate for was the IDF killing his own people.
Right, the whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration.
And if it requires force, that requires able-bodied, physically healthy, not diseased, wealthy Jews with capital, coming from the right professions. And that was the philosophy of the Zionist movement from the 1880s, well into the 1950s, even beyond.
Blessing to NYC, but Jews will feel less and less comfortable in the Big Apple. So do yourself a favor, buy real estate in the land of Israel.
The guy's literally saying, America sucks, America is on its way out, so rather than stay here and try and fix it, jump ship and move to Israel. How is that not an anti-American sentiment?
Okay, Maka, let's get to this video. We have a video. Some YouTube channel picked up on one of my tweets. Let's read this tweet together. This was right after Mandai was elected.
Black people know about comparative suffering, and you know this is a fucking dead-end game. Blacks and Jews do that shit to each other all the time. You ever played Who Suffer More with a Jewish person?
This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets.
And that was the plan. The plan was to force Israel's hand.
I don't know how you, Netanyahu, claim you have the best intelligence in the world, Mossad, and you didn't know that on October 7th they were attacking about it. They wanted to happen, so they had a reason to take them. Yeah, they wanted a reason to take the land.
All right. Dear New York City Jews, not even Mamdani can destroy a great city like New York in one night. But the process has begun. Now, let's pause. The process of destruction is twofold. Socialism, communism, which is the destruction of the economy, and anti-Israelism, anti-Judaism, and that is an undermining of what the real DNA of New York City is, which is Jewish. It has a strong Jewish part of its DNA.
And they killed their own citizens. And they claimed that all these people that was bullshit. They claimed beheaded babies. That was bullshit. Everything that they said was a fucking complete. Not only was it a lie, but they committed all of this atrocities themselves to the Palestinians that have been caught doing it. In fact, they just got caught gang Palestinians. You know, how many babies have they killed?
It's a tough game. Whenever you think you got the Jewish guy on the ropes, that motherfucker will be like, well, don't forget about Egypt.
All they reason they accuse the Palestinians or Hamas or whatever, they're guilty of 100-fold themselves.
Egypt? God damn, nigga, I didn't know he was going all the way back to Egypt.
That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here.
So I'm saying that Mamdani is destructive for the city. Okay, fine. And then I write, indeed, it was a great run for New York Jews, and you were a blessing to NYC. But Jews will feel less and less comfortable in the Big Apple. So do yourself a favor. Why are they going to feel less and less comfortable? Because of jihadism and communism. So do yourself a favor. Buy real estate in the land of Israel. It's good for your kids. It's good for your money. And it's simply the next chapter in our people's history.
And I don't know how many chess players we have here, but there's a very important, I'm not really much of a chess player myself, there's a very important concept, it's a little subtle, called zugzwang. And the idea is that you put your opponent in a position where they're begging not to move. Every move puts them in a worse position.
Well, I think it is a provable fact that most Americans and an even bigger percentage of young Americans get their news from social media. If that is controversial, then people are not paying attention to how...
Is that a bad thing?
Okay, so I'm saying here, I didn't say everybody's got to leave. I said buy real estate. I said it's good for your children who may want this real estate. It's good for your money because housing prices in Israel keep going up. And it's simply the next chapter in our people's history. Israel is the chapter of Jewish people's history.
Well, what does that mean, though, Yishai?
Well, it means that throughout time, we exist in various empires. And now, after 2,000 years of exile, we're returning back to our land.
6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say, stand down?
But there's nothing called, I don't want to move, I pass my turn in chess. It doesn't exist. And so you put somebody in zugzwang when they have to act and their action hurts them. So the options were that either the IDF could do nothing and look weak in a region where you cannot afford to look weak, or respond to a situation in which you've gone beyond human shields.
And so it is the next chapter because Jerusalem is being built. And if New York is not going to house us anymore...
In psychology, if you treat someone kindly, but they have low cognitive ability and poor character, they may interpret your kindness as submission or flattery.
Maybe it's time to come back home to the land of Israel.
In their perception, when you speak to them nicely, they assume you're easy to manipulate. Your respect gives them an unwarranted sense of superiority.
The first two people in charge of Zionist immigration policy in Palestine, these were Menachem Shenkin and Arthur Rupin from 1880 until 1914.
These kinds of people are highly driven by their animal instincts and may hold grudges over trivial matters.
I don't know if it's a bad thing, but I think it's an incomplete.
Well, let me rephrase this.
They should be listening to you, Ravi.
They rejected 61% of these applicants, these Zionists in Europe who wanted to move to Palestine. They were rejected. And the reason for their rejection, because they were too destitute, they were impoverished.
If you realize someone like this is around you, it's best to distance yourself as early as possible. Don't let your kindness without boundaries awaken the evil in their nature.
I mean, obviously.
People do listen to me for what it's worth, and I am also on Instagram and TikTok. But I guess the broader point here is that if Americans are shifting in their views about Israel, and poll after poll shows that that is the case,
that someone was like, it's kind of fucked up to say that there's one pedophile Jew out there who kind of controls all of the politicians and runs the media. Oh, that is real? Oh, everything I said is true? All right, I got a lot of things I got to relearn.
We have language for human shields, but we don't have language for what Sinwar did. And I thought about this in terms of this concept of suicide by cop. I don't know how many people are familiar with suicide by cop, but it didn't exist, I think, until the 1990s. And the reason that the language came about is we had a spate of instances nobody could explain. Some moron would pull a gun, a toy gun, on a policeman and get shot and killed.
Un clan de pedófilos quiere acabar la democracia en Colombia.
A clan of pedophiles wants to end democracy.
And so you keep thinking, like, who's dumb enough to pull a toy gun on a policeman until you realize that that's the objective. And in fact, this was going to be IDF-assisted suicide.
They asked Iran not to develop weapons and get rid of all of their missiles that are longer than 500 kilometers. Can it be clearer? The same missiles that deterred the pedophile genocidal entity of Israel, they want them to get rid of them.
Right? And the Zionist movement had no use for these people. Chaim Weizmann, leader of the Zionist movement, said the same thing in 1919, after you had a wave of pogroms in Ukraine, after which hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian Jews were left impoverished, they were left without work. These were the people actually who were desperate to move to Palestine, who wanted a safe haven and who needed a safe haven. Chaim Weizmann said, we can't help you.
Ukraine, 1932 to 1933.
I happen to be of Ukrainian descent, and 7 million of my people were murdered, and a disproportionate number of the perpetrators of these crimes in the Ukrainian famine happened to be Jews.
The intentional famine was used to destroy any Ukrainian resistance to Jewish Bolshevik control.
This movement isn't about saving Jews, needy Jews who have suffered from persecution. No, we want rich, wealthy, able-bodied, physically able Jews.
It just gets worse and worse by the minute. This is the post that Sean King put out there. In the middle of the night, Elon Musk deleted every single tweet I've made about Israeli Tom Alexandrovich that was arrested in Las Vegas for crimes against children. All of them, every retweet, every link to my articles, gone.
Who didn't have kids, who didn't have needy dependents. That was the philosophy. And by the way, that philosophy was true even after 48.
Those lawyers were told a government demand required us to remove the tweets, but they didn't tell the lawyers which government. Then it turns out that it gets confirmed that Twitter admitted it was the Israelis that asked them to get rid of the tweets, and they complied.
Just like that, everything changed.
And in IDF-assisted suicide, the whole game is to make sure that the video corresponds to a pre-written narrative, which is that the Israeli people, and by extension the Jews, were genocidal maniacs who wanted to kill Arab children.
Thing to say, but like when I'm trying to make arguments in favor, for Israel, I realize I'm talking through a wall of dead children. Like that's what people are seeing. So when I'm like, yeah, there's 1.5 civilians, they're just seeing carnage.
But that's the emotional blackmail.
I mean, fair enough, but like again, and that's nice, but like again, I'm hearing that through a wall of screaming children. It's like I think it's a harder argument than we're understanding. So I actually really strongly think that like Jewish day schools should absolutely say no child owns a smartphone until it's senior year. They don't own one.
Even after the establishment of the state, when in theory now you have the resources of the state, you have an army, you have help from the United States and the Soviet Union, both countries that recognize your state just minutes after its establishment in May 1948, and even beyond, you have Zionist officials die. Oh, we rejected 300 Tunisian Jews because they were diseased, they had epilepsy and syphilis, and we rejected 500 Jews from Poland. These are Holocaust survivors that were rejected because they were unhealthy and sick.
That men will put on military dress to kill and be killed in order to enable unknown businessmen to carry out their ignoble plans. Compulsory military service seems to me to be the most shameful symptom of the lack of personal dignity from which our civilized humanity is suffering today.
At that terrible moment, in our hearts, we knew home was a pen, humanity, cattle.
What if I get hurt?
That's a good question. Now, as long as you hurt the other kid as bad or worse than he hurts you, you'll have done your job, and I'll be proud of you.